Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they pierced him in the side? Were you there when they pierced him in the side? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they pierced him in the side? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they laid him in the tomb?
What was it that hurt the worst? On the last day of Jesus' life, what was it that hurt the worst? That last day had begun early, before dawn. Jesus had been dragged in front of the Jewish leaders there in Jerusalem. So as he stood there before the Jewish council, what was it that hurt the worst? Was it what had happened the night before? He had shared the Passover meal with his disciples. They had shared bread and wine, and one of his trusted followers, Judas, betrayed him for some money. had sold him to these men standing in front of him. Was that the most painful thing for Jesus? Or was it Peter, his most loyal companion, the leader of his disciples? Was it Peter's denial that was the worst? As Jesus stood there before the Jewish council, the morning light began to come up, and a cock crowed. And Jesus knew. He knew that Peter had denied him, denied being his follower, denied even knowing him, denied him not once, but 3 times. Was that what hurt the worst? Or was it the insults and the mocking as Jesus stood there before the Jewish leaders? Was it the insults and the mocking and the beatings from the men who had arrested him and brought him here? Prophesy! Who is it that struck you? That's what they yelled at Jesus after they hit him. And when the chief priests and the scribes, the Jewish leaders, the ones who held all the power, when these leaders questioned Jesus about who he was it hard for him to contain himself? If you are the Messiah, tell us. When the leaders said this, how did Jesus hold back? If you are the Messiah, tell us. But instead of lashing out at them, instead of calling upon the power of God, Jesus simply said this: if I tell you, you will not believe. Are you then the Son of God? That was their response. The leaders needed a direct answer. Are you then the Son of God? What was it that hurt the worst? The fact that Jesus couldn't answer directly, that he couldn't reveal his true self, that he couldn't draw upon his God-given power to prove that he was the Messiah? Or was it the fact that he had to walk down this terrible road ahead simply as a man? Are you then the Son of God? You say that I am. That's all Jesus said. Nothing more. You say that I am. And with that, the die was cast. They dragged him away. They took him to face the ultimate punishment.
We hold the death of the Lord deep in our hearts. Living now we remain with Jesus the Christ. Once we were people afraid, lost in the night. Then by your cross we were saved. Dead became living, life from your giving. We hold the death of the Lord deep in our hearts. Living now we remain with Jesus the Christ.
What was it that hurt the worst? When the chief priests and the scribes brought Jesus in, when they brought him to the headquarters of Pontius Pilate, the governor of Judea, when they made Jesus stand there before Pilate, what was it that hurt the worst? That he was being treated like a common criminal? The chief priests and the elders hurled accusations against Jesus. Many accusations. We find this man perverting our nation, forbidding us to pay taxes to the emperor, and saying that he himself is the Messiah, a king. When Pilate heard all this, he turned to Jesus. He asked him one simple question. Are you the king of the Jews? How did Jesus respond? You say so. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. You say so. He didn't give Pilate the satisfaction of a real answer. More accusations came from the Jewish leaders, so Pilate asked Jesus, have you no answer? See how many charges they bring against you. But this time Jesus made no reply. He said nothing. Was that what hurt the worst? To remain silent in the face of false accusations? To not shout out, yes, I am the King of the Jews? Was that the worst of it? Or maybe it was shouting of another kind. Shouts from the people of Jerusalem. Crucify him! Pilate found no fault with Jesus, but he didn't release him. Instead, he honored a custom among the Jews. It was the Passover festival. Jerusalem was full of people that day, and a crowd had gathered around Pilate's headquarters. As a part of the festival, the governor would release a prisoner to the people, anyone they asked for. Who do you want me to release for you? Pilate asked the crowd. He offered them a choice between a notorious prisoner named Barabbas who had committed murder during insurrection and Jesus. Who do you want me to release for you? Barabbas or Jesus, who he is called Messiah? And the crowd answered, Barabbas! Release Barabbas for us! Then what do you wish me to do with this man you call the King of the Jews? They shouted back, crucify him. Why? What evil has he done? And the crowd shouted all the more, crucify him! Crucify him! Was that what hurt the worst? The rejection? Being rejected by the very people he had fed? The very people he had healed? The very people he had loved? As Pilate handed Jesus over to be executed on a wooden cross, was the rejection the most painful thing? Crucify him.
Behold the death of the Lord deep in our hearts. Living now we remain with Jesus the Christ. Something which we have known, something we've touched, what we have seen with our eyes, this we have heard, life-giving word. We hold the death of the Lord deep in our hearts. Living now we remain with Jesus the Christ.
What was it that hurt the worst? When the soldiers took Jesus from Pilate, what was it that hurt the worst? When the soldiers circled Jesus and they stripped him and they put a scarlet robe on him and they twisted a crown of thorns in his head and they put a reed in his hand and they knelt before him and they mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" and they spat on him and they took the reed from him and struck him on the head with it, what was it that hurt the worst? Was it the sharp thorns gouging the flesh of his brow? Was it the blow to the head that dug the thorns even deeper? Or was it simply the humiliation, the insults and taunts from men who had no idea who he was, no idea what he was capable of, no idea why he was sent here. Bang! The soldiers took the robe off and gave him his own clothes back, and they led him outside. The soldiers forced Jesus to pick up his own cross, the very object upon which he would die, this instrument of torture made of heavy wood. The soldiers forced Jesus to carry his own cross, and Jesus carried it until he couldn't. The soldiers then seized a man named Simon, in from the country, Simon of Cyrene, a passerby in from the country with his 2 sons. The soldiers seized this man and forced him to carry the cross and follow Jesus to the place called Golgotha, the place of the skull, where Jesus would be killed. Bang! What was it that hurt the worst? Was it the anticipation of the crucifixion or the excruciating pain itself? How awful it must have been as the spikes were driven into him. Right hand, bang! Left hand, bang! 2 feet, bang, bang! What was it that hurt the worst? The agonizing pain cascading through his body as they lifted him up and dropped him into place? Was that what hurt the worst? Or was it knowing that the pain would go on for quite some time? Because crucifixion is a slow death.
We hold the death of the Lord deep in our hearts. Living now we remain with Jesus the Christ. He chose to give of himself, became our bread, broken that we might live, love beyond love, paid for our pain. We hold the death of the Lord deep in our hearts. Living now we remain with Jesus the Christ.
What was it that hurt the worst? As Jesus was hung on the cross between 2 common criminals, as Jesus began this torturous journey which would end with his gruesome death, what was it that hurt the worst? By this time was the pain so great that he was immune to the taunts and the jeers? Did he even care about the sign they had put over his head? The sign which read, "The King of the Jews." A sign meant to mock him, which actually told the truth. Did Jesus even care about that? Or the taunts from the people who passed by? Did that hurt Jesus at all at this point? You who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from this cross. The chief priests and the scribes jeered. He saved others. He cannot save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now, so that we may see and believe. Did Jesus even hear their insults through the physical pain he was going through? And the soldiers cast lots for his clothing? Did Jesus even notice or care? As the morning dragged on and the unrelenting pain coursed through his body, could there be something that could hurt worse than the physical pain? When Jesus looked down and saw his mother, saw her standing there with his disciple John, Was that what hurt the worst? For Jesus to see his own mother as she watched him die, to see the pain etched on her face and her red eyes and her tear-soaked cheeks. Was that what hurt the worst? Seeing her like this, knowing that he would no longer be there with her. Jesus spoke to her. Perhaps he was trying to ease her grief. Perhaps he was trying to assure her that she would be all right. Jesus spoke to her. Woman, here is your son. And then he said to John, here is your mother. Was it that hurt the worst? The physical pain of torture or the emotional pain of giving your mother away?
Behold the death of the Lord deep in our hearts. Living now we remain with Jesus the Christ. We are the presence of God. This is our call. Now to become bread and wine, food for the hungry, life for the weary. For to live with the Lord, we must die with the Lord. We hold the death of the Lord deep in our hearts. Living now we remain with Jesus the Christ.
What was it that hurt the worst? When darkness came over the whole land at noon and Jesus hung on that cross for 3 more hours, what was it that hurt the worst?
Was it the anguishing pain of his whole body hanging by the spikes on his hands and feet? Or was it the desperation to breathe as his body's weight crushed down on his lungs? Or perhaps it was something else.
If it wasn't the relentless taunting he has suffered, prophesy! Who is it that struck you? Hail, King of the Jews! If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross.
If it wasn't the rejection from his own people, crucify him, crucify him! If it wasn't the physical pain he had endured,
if it wasn't these, then perhaps there was an even deeper agony that Jesus faced.
at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, after struggling for 6 hours on the cross, Jesus cried out in a loud voice,
Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?
As Jesus was in his final minutes, as his energy faded away second by second, he called out to God, my God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus felt forsaken by his heavenly Father, abandoned, left on his own to face death. Was this what hurt the worst? This preacher and teacher, this prophet who had once said, the Father and I are one.
This preacher and teacher, this prophet who had once said, the Father and I are one, and the Father is in me, and I am in the Father, now in the final moments of his life, when he needed his heavenly Father the most, when he needed some strength, when he needed some assurance, when he needed some hope, there was nothing.
There was nothing.
Was that what hurt the worst? That Jesus was utterly deserted and rejected by God?
As Jesus took his last breath completely alone, left to face the unknown by himself, he uttered only 3 words. And with those 3 words, Jesus bowed his head and gave up his spirit.
It is finished.
What was it that hurt the worst? On the last day of Jesus' life, what was it that hurt the worst?
All of it.
How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that he should give his only Son to make a wretch his treasure. How great the pain of searing loss! The Father turns his face away, as wounds which mar the chosen one brings many sons to glory. Behold the man upon a cross, my sin upon his shoulders. Ashamed I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held him there until it was accomplished. His dying breath has brought me life. I know that it is finished. I will not boast in anything, no gifts, no power, no wisdom, but I will boast in Jesus Christ, his death and resurrection. What should I gain from his reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart: his wounds have paid my ransom. Why should I gain from his reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart: his wounds have paid my ransom.